Next, we will be moving forward to a fireside chat with Mr. Stewart, moderated by Mr. Waleed Bishouty, technology lawyer consultant. Please join me to welcome him on stage. And unfortunately, His Excellency, Mr. Omar al-Naber, member of the Parliament of Jordan, won't be able to join us today. So it will be a fireside chat with Mr. Stewart and Mr. Waleed.
Okay. يعطيكم العافية جميعا. Welcome to the .cyber Summit. I am Waleed Bishouty, technology lawyer here based in Jordan. And unfortunately, we have Mr. Stewart Room, whom you've just all witnessed, give us an incredible presentation. Unfortunately, His Excellency will not be able to join us. Our topic is an exciting topic. So I find it exciting because I do technology law, but I also think it's exciting because we're going to talk about data protection. And Jordan has been in the process of enacting a data protection law for many years now. And luckily, right before this summit, last week, the Jordan data protection law was published in the official Gazette. So that's why I find it very interesting. Okay, so do I need to give another introduction about Mr. Stewart? I'm going to move on. This is just a little brief about myself. I have a computer science degree, hence why I'm interested in technology law, and I'm doing an LLM in technology law as well. The data protection law. So last week, as I said, an official Gazette number 5881, the data protection law came out, which, in my opinion, follows a lot of the other data protection laws that have been acted all over the world, including GDPR, with some differences that we're going to be talking about today. And then we're going to talk about some of the practical tips. I think Stewart here is going to be able to give us some practical tips for Jordanian companies on how to comply with whether the data protection law in Jordan or if you're doing business in Europe or other places, what do you need to do for that? So let's first, because I don't know what the audience, the degree of familiarity with personal data protection. So I don't know, Stewart, if you can give us just a brief about what is personal data protection under the GDPR or under the UK Data Protection Act?
Yeah, basically, if you process information that relates to an identified person or an identifiable person, so that's personal data, processing is the doing of any act on or towards personal data, except thinking about it or dreaming about it. So if you put data into a machine, into a computer, it relates to a person, that's data processing, that's regulated by the GDPR.
And what is a controller? What is a data processor?
Yeah, so the focus of regulation are the actors around processing. So the data controller is the organization that determines the purpose for processing, why are we using data, and the means. We're going to do it in the cloud, we're going to use 5G, whatever it may be. So the controller carries all of the legal obligations, or the main legal obligations.
So under the Jordanian law, the controller, or mas'ool, is any natural or legal person, whether inside or outside Jordan, who has the data in their custody. What do you think of that definition?
So it's a good start. It's much more expansive than the GDPR idea because the GDPR's definition doesn't hinge on possession. We have third parties who be in possession of data on behalf of the controller. That would be a data processor. So there might be a reason to develop that idea to distinguish between mere possession of data and what it is you're trying to regulate.
Mm-hmm. And how does that have an effect on cloud services, for example. So if I'm a controller who uses cloud services, whether inside or outside Jordan, whether it's infrastructure as a service or software as a service?
Yeah, so with that definition, you would capture anyone who merely holds data where it is in the world. So mere possession, mere storage. So you could have that concept, but graduate between persons, between actors, and try and bring in this concept of processorship aligned to controllership, so that if a cloud service provider was processing data, we still focus the law's attention on the controller who put it into the cloud in the first place.
What is a data protection officer?
Yeah, great question. So I'm the president of the National Association of Data Protection Officers in the UK. So it's the oldest organization for data protection professionals in the world, funnily enough. And the data protection officer within European concepts is there to stand between the regulator and their organization, the controller. And they're there to provide information to both parties. They need to advise the controller about how to process data, how to be compliant. But they're also there as a main contact point for the regulator who's trying to understand what the controller's up to.
And here I think we have a similar role under the Jordanian law, whereas the policies, the points of contact and all of that. But then the law also states the cases where you have to appoint a DPO or data protection officer. One of them is if you process sensitive personal information. But one point that I find a bit maybe problematic, and I'd like your opinion on, is appointing a DPO when transferring databases outside Jordan. So what do you think? I think that could cause a problem if you're using a cloud service provider. For example, like Microsoft 365, which most probably hosts data outside Jordan. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at bringing in a data protection officer, we also need to think about the interests of small businesses, small organizations, as well as large businesses. Understand where the regulatory load will be. So you'll have very, very small businesses who just happen to use cloud because it comes with some kind of application they're using. Under the scenario you've just painted, they would need to appoint a data protection officer. So, that would be an overhead. That'd be quite expensive for a small business. So there are exemptions under European law for business size. But if it's a large business and it's using the cloud and moving data all around the world,
it's only fair.
Then I do see the need for a data protection officer to a degree.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the other questions in the interest of time. One thing that we want to make clear is that although this is a cybersecurity summit, personal data is not about security. There are requirements on the controller or the processor to secure the data and have appropriate measures to secure the data. But at the end of the day, it's not about security, right? It's about the rights of the data subjects.
Yeah,
right?
Data protection is much broader in terms of the regulation of data use. So under European law, there's a principle that data should be accurate. It should be used only for a fair, lawful and transparent purpose. There's a data minimization rule. That's about who can access data, the volumes of data. There's also a retention rule. There's a security principle within it as well. So we don't want to look at data protection as being simply about security. However, you need security as a condition for satisfying the rest of the data protection principles.
So you can protect the data. That's the whole purpose.
Yeah, if you're not secure, then
you're not protecting the data.
You're not protecting the data so someone else can take it, and therefore the data's been maximized because its copies have been made rather than minimized. So security is an integral foundation point for all aspects of data protection.
So let's talk about SMEs versus corporations, the risks and challenges. Generally, challenges for SMEs are monetary in most cases, right? You need a budget, especially now if you need a DPO. So there are a lot of challenges. Maybe data structures need to be modified. This probably applies also to corporations. But what is your experience when it comes to SMEs versus corporations?
Yeah, if you just simply have a set of rules that apply across the economy, regardless of business size, you are going to create failure by default. You're setting people up for failure. And if you just to take one aspect, just the security principle in data protection and all the complex topics we've been talking about today, how does a small business get to grips with all of that? So I think we've just got to be mindful about what the priorities are for different parts of the economy and the priorities for different sizes of entities and different resources they have available.
And generally, in smaller entities have higher risks of data. All entities have, there's a risk when personal data is disclosed, but then you have the fines that are set under the laws, right? I haven't talked about this in the interest of time because we only have 50 more seconds to go, but I'm going to move on to the next question. I just want some advice to entities. So Jordanian entities, for example, that want to operate in Europe. You have an e-commerce platform where Jordanian, Egyptian, etc. want to operate in Europe, or vice versa. If you have foreign companies that want to get the services, outsourcing services from Jordanian companies. There's a data protection element in both cases. Right? What can you talk about this?
Well, we've only got a few seconds left. The way I would put it is that your parliament needs to be congratulated for embracing this legislation because it's going to help with inward investment.
Yes.
And it's also going to help with Jordan breaking further into the global economy. So the more that legislation is harmonized on a global scale, the better it is for any country. So this is a great thing for Jordan.
Because in Jordan, under this law, you cannot transfer data out unless they have similar security requirements. And that's the same thing that happens, for example, under the GDPR in Europe to other states, right?
You got it.
I know we're out of time, but one last question, which I think is very important for especially big corporations. How do you choose a DPO? And you have a corporate structure. So you have the security department, you have the CISO, you have legal, you have risk, you have compliance. How do you choose a DPO from one of them, or do you bring in someone, and who does that person report to? Do you have a team?
Yeah.
Just a bit of advice on
that.
Yeah,
it's easy to get quite purist about this. And in Europe, the arguments about who should be the DPO, they've been unnecessarily complicated, about segregation of duties, this, that, and the other. I think at the beginning, it's about finding the person who's best suited. So, if you have got a technology person in the business, it might be them. A lawyer, it might be them. A security officer, it might be them. Eventually, as the law evolves and matures, becomes clearer, I'd engage with debates about segregation of duties, but not at this moment. Just get the best person for the job, even if they've got another job.
All right, great. I think that's the last question. No quick Q&A, sorry. Thank you very much.